The wagon train pulled out at dawn, and Sarah Winters watched from the porch of the general store as the last family loaded their belongings and disappeared down the dusty road that led away from Jordan Valley, Oregon. She had been awake since before sunrise, listening to the sounds of her neighbors preparing to leave, the creak of wagon wheels, the nervous whinnying of horses, the low murmurs of families saying goodbye to the only home some of their children had ever known. Now, as the sun climbed higher over the Awahi Mountains, the silence that settled over the abandoned town felt heavy enough to crush her chest. Sarah was 23 years old, and she had already buried one husband in the rocky soil behind the church. Thomas Winters had been a good man, a dreamer who believed the stories about gold in every stream, fortune in every claim. He had worked himself to exhaustion in the freezing waters of Jordan Creek, and when the fever took him last winter, he had died still believing that tomorrow would be the day he struck it rich. That was 2 years ago, back when Jordan Valley still had a doctor, back when the streets were crowded with hopeful miners, and the saloon stayed open until dawn. The gold rush had ended not with a bang but with a whisper. The easy gold was gone, and the difficult gold required equipment and money that most men did not have. One by one, families packed up and left. Some went back east, others headed to California or further north to new opportunities. Sarah had received offers to travel with nearly every departing family, well-meaning neighbors who did not want to leave a young widow alone in a dying town. But she had refused them all. The general store had been her father's before he died of a heart attack 3 years ago. Her mother had passed when Sarah was just a girl, leaving her to help run the business from the time she could count change. This building, this land, these wooden floors she had swept 1,000 times, this was all she had left of her family. Thomas was buried here. Her parents were buried here. Leaving felt like abandoning them all over again. She stepped off the porch, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust. The street was empty except for a few buildings standing like tombstones. The saloon, the assay office, the boarding house, all locked up tight. Mrs. Chen, who had run a laundry service, had been the last to go, and she had pressed a bag of coins into Sarah's hand before climbing onto her wagon. "Come with us," Mrs. Chen had begged. "There is nothing for you here anymore." But Sarah had shaken her head and watched another piece of her world roll away. She walked down the center of the street, past the abandoned blacksmith shop, where old Hank Morrison had once worked 16-hour days shoeing horses and repairing mining equipment. Past the church where Reverend Patterson had preached every Sunday until his congregation dwindled to 3 people, and he finally admitted defeat. Past the row of small houses where families had laughed and fought and lived their lives, all empty now, all silent. Sarah made it to the end of the street before she heard the sound. A horse, somewhere behind the buildings. She turned, her heart suddenly pounding. Bandits sometimes passed through these remote areas, and a woman alone in an abandoned town would be an easy target. She hurried back toward the store, trying not to run, trying not to look scared. But as she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with a man leading a tired-looking horse. "Whoa there," he said, stepping back quickly. Sarah recognized him immediately. Ryder Reeves, one of the most stubborn men she had ever met. He was maybe 25 or 26, tall and lean with dark hair that always seemed a bit too long and eyes the color of summer grass. He had arrived in Jordan Valley about 3 years ago with a smile on his face and optimism in his pocket, convinced he would strike it rich. Unlike most miners who worked in groups or for larger operations, Ryder had insisted on working his own small claim up in the hills. He had never found gold. "Not enough to matter anyway, Ryder Reeves," Sarah said, catching her breath. I thought you left with the Johnsons yesterday. Nope. He adjusted his hat, a battered thing that had seen better days. Still here. Why, he shrugged. Could ask you the same question. This is my home, Sarah said firmly. I have a business here. Business needs customers, Ryder pointed out. He gestured at the empty street. Seems to be a shortage of those at the moment. Sarah crossed her arms. What about you? Your claim is worthless. Everyone knows there is no gold left worth finding. What possible reason could you have for staying? Ryder was quiet for a moment, his hand resting on his horse's neck. The animal looked as worn out as its owner. Same as you, I suppose. This is home now. I put 3 years of my life into this place. Feels wrong to just walk away. That is the most foolish thing I have ever heard, Sarah said, but there was no real heat in her words. Maybe because she understood exactly what he meant. Probably, Ryder agreed. He looked around at the empty buildings. Where is everyone? Gone. The last wagon pulled out this morning. All of them, all of them. They stood there in the dusty street, 2 people alone in a ghost town, both too stubborn to admit they had made a mistake. Well, Ryder finally said, I suppose we should figure out how this is going to work. How what is going to work? Us being the only 2 people in town. We will need to cooperate, watch out for each other. Winter is coming in a few months. We will need supplies, firewood, someone to check on things if one of us gets sick or hurt. Sarah had not thought that far ahead. She had been so focused on refusing to leave that she had not considered the practical reality of being alone. Or almost alone, she supposed, since Ryder apparently had the same stubborn streak she did. I can take care of myself, she said. I am sure you can, Ryder replied. But there is no sense in making things harder than they need to be. I am proposing we help each other out. Neighbors. Sarah studied him. She had never paid much attention to Ryder Reeves before. He had been just another miner, one of dozens who drifted through Jordan Valley hoping to strike it rich. But unlike most of them, he had never been loud or boastful. He had kept to himself mostly, coming into town every few weeks for supplies, always polite but never staying long to socialize. Fine, she said. Neighbors, but I do not need charity. Neither do I, Ryder said with a slight smile. How about trade? I am fair handy with repairs and such. Your store looks like it could use some work on the roof. I noticed some loose shingles last time I was in town. He was right. The roof had been leaking in the back room during the last rain. Sarah had meant to hire someone to fix it, but then everyone had left. What would you want in trade? She asked carefully. Food, mostly. My supplies are running pretty low and I've got about $15 to my name, not enough to last through winter. I do not have much either, Sarah admitted. Most of what is left in the store is things people did not want badly enough to carry with them. Some canned goods, flour, beans. The valuable stuff got bought up months ago. Better than nothing, Ryder said. And I can hunt. Get us some fresh meat now and then. Sarah considered. It made sense, she supposed. They both needed help and pride would not keep them fed through the winter. All right, she agreed. You fix my roof, I will pay you in supplies. But that is all. I am not looking for anything more than a business arrangement. Something flickered in Ryder's expression, but he nodded. Understood. I will start on that roof tomorrow if the weather holds. He tipped his hat to her and led his horse toward the old stable at the edge of town. Sarah watched him go, then turned back to her empty store. She spent the rest of the day taking inventory of what remained, writing careful lists in her ledger. It was worse than she had thought. Most of the shelves were bare or held items no one would need, decorative dishes, a few books with water damage, sewing notions. The food supplies were minimal. If she was careful, very careful, she might have enough to last 3 months. Maybe 4 if she stretched every meal. That night, Sarah ate a sparse dinner of beans and bread, sitting alone in the apartment above the store that she had shared with Thomas. The silence was oppressive. She had grown used to quiet in the past year as the town emptied out, but this was different. This was the silence of abandonment, of being left behind. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. It was not too late to change her mind. She could pack what she could carry and walk. The road east eventually connected to the main route to Boise City. Someone would give her a ride, but even as she thought it, Sarah knew she would not go. This was her home, her history. Everything that mattered to her was here. She finally fell asleep as moonlight streamed through the window, casting silver shadows across the empty room. True to his word, Ryder appeared the next morning with tools slung over his shoulder. Sarah let him in through the back and showed him where the roof leaked. "Should not take more than a day or two," he said, examining the damage. "You have got some rot in the boards here." "I will need to replace those too." "There is probably lumber in the old boarding house," Sarah suggested. "Mrs. Patterson was going to add another room before they decided to leave. The materials might still be there." "I will take a look," Ryder said. Sarah watched him climb up onto the roof, moving with easy confidence despite the precarious footing. He worked steadily through the morning, and she found herself glancing up at the ceiling occasionally, listening to the sound of someone else in her world. Around noon, she made sandwiches with the last of some dried beef and brought one out to Ryder along with water. "You do not have to do that," he said, but he took the food gratefully. "You are working through lunch," Sarah pointed out. "It is just being decent." They sat on the porch together, eating in companionable silence. The sun was hot overhead, and Sarah could see sweat staining Ryder's shirt. "How long have you been planning to stay?" she asked. "In Jordan Valley." Ryder took a drink of water. "Honestly, I have not thought much beyond the next few months. See how winter goes. Decide from there. That is not much of a plan." "Rich coming from someone in the same situation," Ryder said, but he was smiling. Sarah felt herself smile back, surprising herself. "Fair point." "What about you?" Ryder asked. "What is your long-term plan?" "Wait," Sarah said simply. "Towns do not always die just because the gold runs out. Maybe new people will come. Maybe they will find something else valuable here. Water rights, grazing land, something." Jordan Valley is on a decent route between Boise and the Nevada territories. People might need a place to stop for supplies. "That is actually not a bad idea," Ryder said thoughtfully. "If you could get the word out that the store is still operating, travelers might start stopping through regular like." "Except I do not have much to sell," Sarah reminded him. "Not yet. But if you had some money to restock, you could build it back up. Travelers need basics. Coffee, tobacco, ammunition, simple foods. You do not need fancy goods for that." "And where would I get money to restock?" Sarah asked dryly. Ryder was quiet for a moment. "I still have my claim. It is not producing much, but there is still flex here and there. Maybe if I worked it harder, focused just on getting enough to help us both get through, it would not be much, but it would be something." "Ryder, you have been working that claim for 3 years. If there was real gold there, you would have found it by now." "Probably," he admitted. "But what else am I going to do? At least it is a purpose." Sarah understood that. Purpose was sometimes all that kept a person moving forward. "Well," she said, standing and brushing crumbs from her skirt, "fix my roof first. Then you can go chase your dreams in the creek." She meant it to sound dismissive, but Ryder just laughed. "Yes, madam." He finished the roof repairs by the end of the second day. Sarah paid him with supplies as promised, watching as he carefully packed flour and beans and canned vegetables into his saddlebags. "This is too much," he said. The roof was not worth this. "Take it," Sarah insisted. I would rather it go to someone who can use it than sit on my shelves until it spoils. Ryder met her eyes and something passed between them, an understanding maybe. They were both alone. They both needed help. Pride would not keep them alive. "Thank you," he said quietly. After he left, Sarah felt the silence descend again like a physical weight. She busied herself with cleaning, organizing, anything to keep her hands occupied. But as evening approached and long shadows filled the empty street, the loneliness crept back in. She was lighting a lamp in the store when she heard a noise outside. Footsteps on the wooden porch. Sarah's heart jumped into her throat. She grabbed the rifle her father had kept under the counter, hands shaking as she pointed it toward the door. "Sarah, it is Ryder. Do not shoot." She lowered the rifle, embarrassed by her fear. "You should not sneak up on people like that." Ryder came inside, carrying something wrapped in cloth. "Sorry. I just thought you might like some company for dinner. I managed to shoot a couple rabbits this afternoon. Figured we could share." Sarah looked at the wrapped bundle, then at Ryder's hopeful expression. The truth was, she had been dreading another night alone with her thoughts. "All right," she said. "Come upstairs. I will cook them." Her small kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people, but they managed. Sarah seasoned the rabbit with what herbs she had left while Ryder told her about his claim up in the hills, about the little cabin he had built himself, about the way the creek looked in the morning light. "It is real pretty up there," he said. "Peaceful. I used to think about gold all the time, but lately I just go up there to be away from everything. Guess that does not matter much now that everyone is gone anyway." "Do you regret staying?" Sarah asked, turning the meat in the pan. Ryder thought about it. "Ask me again in a few months when we are snowed in and running low on food. I might have a different answer then." Honestly, no, I do not regret it, not yet anyway." He looked at her across the small kitchen. "What about you?" "I do not know," Sarah admitted. "I thought I would feel stronger about my choice. Instead, I just feel scared most of the time." "That is normal, though, is not it? Being scared of the unknown, I suppose." They ate at Sarah's small table, the first real meal either of them had enjoyed in weeks. Ryder told stories about some of the other miners he had known, funny anecdotes about the wild optimism and crushing disappointments of the gold rush years. Sarah found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. "There was this one fellow, called himself Lucky Pete," Ryder said. "He was convinced he had a system for finding gold. He would dangle this old pocket watch on a chain and claim it would start spinning when it was over gold deposits." "Did it work?" Sarah asked. "Not even once." But that did not stop old Pete. He spent a whole year wandering around the hills with that watch, absolutely sure the next spot would be the one. Last I heard, he moved to California to try his luck there. "I hope he found something," Sarah said. "Me too. He was a good man, just unlucky." After dinner, Ryder helped Sarah wash the dishes, and they stood side by side in the small kitchen, hands in sudsy water, talking about nothing and everything. It felt normal, comfortable, like maybe they could actually survive this strange situation they had both chosen. When Ryder finally left, promising to check on her in a few days, Sarah felt the loneliness less keenly. She lay in bed that night thinking about green eyes and easy smiles and the way Ryder's laugh sounded in her small kitchen. The days fell into a pattern. Ryder would come to town every few days, always with some excuse. He needed to check on his horse at the stable. He wanted to fix the loose board on Sarah's porch. He thought he saw smoke and wanted to make sure everything was all right. Always something, always a reason. And Sarah would invite him in. She would make coffee if she had it or tea from dried herbs. They would talk, sharing the burden of isolation with each other. Sometimes Ryder would bring meat from hunting. Sometimes Sarah would trade him supplies. but mostly they just kept each other company. 3 weeks after everyone left, a small group of travelers came through Jordan Valley. Sarah almost cried with relief when she saw the wagon approaching. They were a family heading to Boise, and they needed supplies for the last leg of their journey. "I did not expect anyone to still be here," the father said, a burly man named Jack. "Heard this town was abandoned." "Almost," Sarah said, "but the store is still open." She sold them coffee, flour, and dried meat. They paid her real money, coins that clinked beautifully into her cash box. It was not much, but it was hope. Hope that her plan might actually work. After they left, Sarah ran most of the way to Ryder's claim, her skirts hiked up to keep from tripping. She found him knee-deep in the cold creek water, panning with the patient determination of someone who had long since given up on miracles. "Ryder," she called, breathless and excited. He looked up, immediately concerned. "What is wrong? Are you hurt?" No, nothing is wrong." Travelers came through. A family. They bought supplies. Real money, Ryder. It worked. My idea worked. The smile that broke across his face was brilliant. He splashed out of the creek, not bothering with his boots, and before Sarah quite knew what was happening, he had swept her up in a hug, spinning her around. "That is amazing," he said. "I knew it would work. I knew it." Sarah was laughing, dizzy from the spinning and the joy and the feeling of Ryder's arms around her. When he set her down, they were both grinning like fools. "How much did they buy?" Ryder asked. "About $8 worth. It is not a fortune, but it is a start." "It is more than a start. It is proof. If one family came through, others will too." They walked back toward town together, planning and dreaming. Sarah would need to figure out how to get more supplies. Ryder suggested she could send an order to Boise with the next travelers who came through, pay them a fee to bring back goods. It would be expensive, but if even a few more groups stopped at Jordan Valley, it would pay for itself. "You could expand," Ryder said enthusiastically. "Not just the store. You could offer simple meals to travelers, a place to sleep. Jordan Valley could be a railway station." "That would take money I do not have," Sarah pointed out. "Not as much as you think. Most of the buildings are still standing. The boarding house just needs some cleaning and basic repairs." "I could do that. And you are a good cook. People would pay for a decent meal." Sarah let herself imagine it. Jordan Valley coming back to life, not as a mining town but as a stop on the trail. Her business growing, becoming stable. A future that was not just about surviving but actually living. "We could really do this," she said softly. "We?" Ryder asked. Sarah looked at him. Somewhere over the past few weeks, Ryder had stopped being just a neighbor and had become something more. A partner maybe. A friend definitely. And if she was honest with herself, something beyond friendship was growing too, though she had been trying hard not to acknowledge it. "I could not do it alone," she said. "If you are willing to help, to be part of this, then yes, we could do this together." Ryder stopped walking. They were at the edge of town, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the empty street. "Sarah," he said carefully, "I need you to understand something. I do not have anything to offer you, no money, no prospects. My claim is worthless. I am just a stubborn fool who did not know when to give up." "That makes two of us," Sarah said. "I am serious. If we are going to be partners in this, you need to know what you are getting. I can work hard. I can fix things and hunt and do whatever needs doing, but I cannot promise you success. I cannot even promise we will make it through winter." "I am not asking for promises," Sarah said. "I am just asking if you want to try together." Ryder looked at her for a long moment, something intense and searching in his expression. Then he held out his hand. "Partners," he said. Sarah shook his hand, and the deal was made. Over the next few weeks. They worked together with renewed purpose. Ryder spent his days cleaning out the old boarding house, repairing beds, fixing broken windows. Sarah went through every building in town, salvaging anything useful. Linens from abandoned homes, dishes and cups, furniture that was still in decent shape. She cleaned and mended and organized, transforming the boarding house from a dusty wreck into something approaching respectable. More travelers came through, not many, but enough. A prospector heading east who bought ammunition and tobacco. 2 families in a wagon train who needed flour and coffee. A circuit preacher on horseback who paid for a meal and a bed for the night. Sarah cooked for them all, serving simple but filling food. Beans and cornbread, stew made from whatever Ryder managed to hunt, biscuits with honey. The travelers were always grateful, happy to have a place to rest and refuel. "You have got a good thing going here," the preacher told her before he left. "I will spread the word. I know lots of folks who travel these routes. They will be glad to know Jordan Valley is open for business." Word did spread. By late fall, they were seeing travelers almost every week. Not enough to make them rich, but enough to keep the supplies stocked and give them both a small income. Sarah was able to send orders to boys, and traders started making regular runs, delivering goods in exchange for a reasonable fee. Jordan Valley was not exactly alive again, but it was no longer dead either. It was breathing, surviving, finding a new purpose. Through it all, Sarah and Ryder grew closer. They worked side by side during the days, and in the evenings they would sit together on the porch of the store, watching the sun set over the mountains. They talked about everything: their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Ryder told her about growing up in Missouri, about losing his parents to cholera, about heading west with nothing but determination and foolish hope. Sarah told him about her father, about Thomas, about the grief that still caught her off guard sometimes. "You still love him?" Ryder asked one evening. It was a bold question, but they had moved past the point of dancing around difficult topics. "I will always love him," Sarah said honestly. "But he is gone. I have had to accept that. The question is not whether I still love Thomas. The question is whether I am allowed to love someone else too." She felt Ryder tense beside her on the porch swing. "Are you," he asked quietly, "allowed to love someone else?" Sarah turned to look at him. The setting sun painted everything gold and red, and Ryder's eyes were bright in the fading light. "I think so," she said. "I think Thomas would want me to be happy. He would not want me to spend the rest of my life alone." "Sarah," Ryder said, and there was something raw in his voice. "I have to tell you something. I did not stay in Jordan Valley because of the town, or my claim, or any of that." "Why did you stay?" "Because of you." The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her heart hammering against her ribs. "I have been watching you for 3 years, Ryder continued. "I know that sounds strange, but I do not mean it in a creepy way. I just mean I noticed you. The way you ran your store, always fair, always kind. The way you took care of your husband when he was sick. The way you grieved him when he died but kept going anyway. You are the strongest person I have ever met, and somewhere along the way I fell in love with you." Sarah could not breathe. She had suspected maybe, had felt the growing tension between them, but hearing him say it out loud was something else entirely. "I know I should not say this," Ryder went on. "I know I have got no right. I am broke. I have got no prospects, and you are still mourning your husband. But if I am going to stay here, if we are going to be partners, you deserve to know the truth. I love you, Sarah. I have loved you for a long time." "Ryder," Sarah whispered. "You do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "You do not have to feel the same way. I just needed you to know." But Sarah was already moving. She reached for him, her hand cupping his cheek, and then she kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, both of them uncertain. But then Ryder's arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened. It was nothing like kissing Thomas had been. This was different, new, terrifying, and wonderful all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Sarah rested her forehead against Ryder's. "I love you too," she said. "I did not want to admit it. I felt guilty, like I was betraying Thomas, but I cannot help how I feel." "I love you, Ryder Reeves." Ryder laughed, a sound of pure joy, and kissed her again. They sat on that porch swing for hours, holding each other, talking and kissing and making quiet plans. The future that had seemed so frightening and uncertain suddenly felt full of possibility. "Marry me," Ryder said as the stars came out overhead. "We have only been courting for about 10 minutes, Sarah pointed out. "We have been courting for weeks, we just did not call it that. Sarah, I do not want to waste any more time. Life is too short and too unpredictable. I want to spend whatever time I have with you, as your husband, if you will have me." Sarah thought about it. It was fast, maybe too fast, but Ryder was right. Life was short. She had learned that painful lesson already, and she knew deep in her bones that this was right. Ryder was right. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married a week later by the circuit preacher on one of his regular passes through Jordan Valley. It was a small ceremony, just the three of them in the old church with its dust-covered pews. Sarah wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton that she had mended carefully. Ryder had borrowed a clean shirt from the general store stock, promising to work it off later. "You, Sarah Winters, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the preacher asked. "I do," Sarah said, looking into Ryder's eyes. "Do you, Ryder Reeves, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Ryder said firmly. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Ryder did thoroughly, and the preacher laughed. "You two are going to do just fine," he said. That night, Sarah and Ryder moved his few belongings into the apartment above the store. It was strange having someone share her space again, but it was a good strange. Ryder hung his clothes next to hers, put his worn boots by the door next to her shoes, and suddenly the apartment felt like a home again instead of a mausoleum. They made love for the first time in the bed Sarah had once shared with Thomas, and she felt no guilt. This was her life now. This was her future, and it was going to be beautiful. The first snow came in early November, dusting the mountains white. Sarah and Ryder spent the days preparing for winter, stocking up on firewood, making sure all the buildings were sealed against the cold. Travelers became less frequent as the weather worsened, but they still came, grateful for the warm shelter and hot food. One afternoon, a group of 6 men rode into town. Sarah was in the kitchen when she heard their horses, and something about the sound made her uneasy. She went to the window and saw them, rough-looking men with hard eyes and guns on their hips. "Ryder," she called, keeping her voice calm. He came quickly, took one look out the window, and his expression went serious. "Stay inside. Lock the door behind me." "What are you going to do?" "Talk to them. Figure out what they want. But if anything goes wrong, you grab that rifle and you do not hesitate. Understand?" Sarah nodded, her mouth dry. Ryder went downstairs and out onto the porch. Sarah watched from the upstairs window, her father's rifle in her hands. "Gentlemen," Ryder said easily. "Welcome to Jordan Valley. What can we do for you?" The apparent leader of the group, a scarred man with a black beard, looked around at the empty town. "This place abandoned. Not entirely. We have got a store and boarding house still operating. You looking for supplies or a place to stay? Maybe. Or maybe we are just looking for whatever valuables got left behind when everyone ran off." Sarah's hands tightened on the rifle. "There is nothing like that here," Ryder said calmly. "Just a small operation. But we can sell you supplies at fair prices if you need them." The bearded man dismounted, and his companions did the same. "Why do not you show us what you have got? We will decide what we want to pay." "That is not how this works," Ryder said, and there was steel in his voice now. "You want supplies, you pay for them. You do not want to pay, you ride on out. Those are your options. You giving us orders." Another man stepped forward, his hand resting on his gun. "Do not look to me like you are in a position to be making demands." Sarah watched the scene unfold, her heart pounding. There were 6 of them and only one rider. This could go bad very quickly, but then Ryder did something unexpected. He laughed. "You boys are not outlaws," he said. "Real outlaws do not ride into towns asking questions. They just take what they want. You are just drifters, probably down on your luck, looking for easy pickings. I get it. I have been broke and desperate too, but this is not the place to try your luck." "And why is that?" the bearded man asked dangerously. "Because there is nothing worth taking, and because my wife is watching from that window up there with a rifle pointed at your head. She is a hell of a shot, and she will not miss. So you have got 2 choices. Buy some supplies like civilized men, or ride out with your lives and your dignity intact." "What is it going to be?" There was a long, tense moment. Sarah aimed the rifle at the bearded man, praying she would not have to pull the trigger, praying even more that Ryder's bluff would work. Finally, the bearded man laughed. "Fair enough. We could use some coffee and flour if you have got it." The tension broke. The men relaxed and Ryder led them into the store. Sarah stayed at her post until the transaction was complete and the men rode out of town, heading north. When Ryder came back upstairs, Sarah was shaking. "That was incredibly stupid," she said. "There were 6 of them." "I know, but they were not really dangerous, just hungry and tired. I used to be just like them." He took the rifle from her trembling hands and pulled her into his arms. "It is all right, they are gone. What if they come back? What if worse men come? Ryder, we are sitting ducks out here." "I know," he said quietly. "I have been thinking about that. Maybe we should put the word out that we need some help. Hire someone to stay on, provide security. A lot of men are looking for work now that the mining has dried up. We could offer room and board, split of the profits." "We barely make enough to support ourselves," Sarah protested. "Then we will make it work somehow, but you are right. We cannot keep doing this alone, it is too risky." The encounter with the drifters shook them both. They had been so focused on the romantic notion of rebuilding Jordan Valley that they had not fully considered the dangers. The West was still wild, and 2 people alone were vulnerable. 3 days later, an older man rode into town. He was maybe 50, with gray hair and a weathered face. He dismounted carefully, favoring his left leg. "Heard you folks might be looking for help," he said to Ryder. "Name is Bill Crawford. I am a decent hand with repairs and such, and I can shoot if needed. I am looking for honest work and a place to stay. Where did you hear we were hiring?" Sarah asked, coming out of the store. "Met Preacher Johnson on the road. He said you 2 were trying to make a go of this town, said you could probably use another set of hands." Sarah and Ryder exchanged glances. "We cannot pay much," Ryder warned. "Room, board, and a small cut of the profits." "That is about all we can manage." "That is more than I have got now," Bill said. "I am not picky, I just need honest work." They hired him on the spot. Bill moved into one of the rooms in the boarding house, and his presence made an immediate difference. With 3 of them, the work became more manageable. Bill was handy with carpentry and managed to repair several of the other buildings in town, making them weatherproof for winter. He also proved to be a calming presence, his easy demeanor putting travelers at ease. Winter settled over Jordan Valley in earnest. Snow covered the mountains and drifted in the streets. Travelers became rare, sometimes weeks between groups, but they had prepared well. The stores were stocked, firewood was plentiful, and the 3 of them settled into a comfortable routine. Sarah spent the long winter days cooking, mending, and managing the books. She was careful with every penny, tracking expenses and income with meticulous detail. They were not getting rich, but they were surviving. More than surviving, actually. They were building something. Ryder and Bill spent their days maintaining the buildings, hunting when the weather allowed, and planning improvements for spring. They drew up elaborate plans for expanding the boarding house, adding a proper dining room where Sarah could serve meals to larger groups. In the evenings, they would gather around the stove in Sarah and Ryder's apartment, playing cards or just talking. Bill turned out to be a gifted storyteller with decades of adventures to share. He had been everywhere and done everything, or so it seemed. Cowboy, soldier, gold miner, railroad worker, he had lived a dozen lives. "Why did you take this job?" Sarah asked him one snowy evening. "You could have gone to Boys or somewhere bigger, found steadier work." Bill shrugged. "I am tired of big places, tired of crowds and noise. This suits me just fine. Simple work, good people, a purpose. That is all a man needs at my age." On Christmas, Sarah made a special dinner with the last of the dried apples and some precious sugar. They ate together by candlelight, the three of them, and Sarah felt grateful. A year ago, she had been so alone. Now she had a husband and a friend, and Jordan Valley had a fighting chance at survival. To new beginnings, Ryder toasted with cups of weak coffee. To new beginnings, Sarah and Bill echoed. As winter slowly gave way to spring, travelers began coming through again. The first group brought news that made Sarah's heart sing. They had heard about Jordan Valley from multiple sources, and word was spreading that it was a reliable way station. Clean beds, good food, fair prices. "We planned our route specifically to stop here," the father of one family told Sarah. "After what we heard, we did not want to miss it." Business picked up steadily. Some weeks they had travelers almost every day. Sarah hired 2 women from a passing wagon train, a mother and daughter who had been planning to settle in Boys, but were intrigued by the opportunity in Jordan Valley. Ellen and Marie Patterson were skilled cooks and hard workers, and with their help, Sarah was able to expand the food service significantly. By summer, Jordan Valley was humming with activity. It was not the boom town it had been during the gold rush, but it was alive again in a different way. Sustainable. Real. One evening in late July, Sarah and Ryder sat on their porch watching the sunset. Sarah was 7 months pregnant, her belly round and prominent under her simple dress. It had been a surprise when she realized she was expecting, but a joyful one. Scared? Ryder asked, his hand resting gently on her stomach. Terrified, Sarah admitted. "What if something goes wrong? The nearest doctor is in Boys, days away." "Ellen delivered 5 babies herself. She said she will help, and I will be right there with you." "You are not allowed to faint," Sarah said. "I will do my best," Ryder promised with a smile. The baby came in early September, a long and difficult labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Ryder did not faint, but he came close several times. Ellen coached Sarah through it with firm efficiency, and when the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy with strong lungs and his father's green eyes, the relief was overwhelming. "What should we name him?" Ryder asked, holding his son with terrified gentleness. "Robert," Sarah said softly. "After my father." "Robert Reeves," Ryder said, testing the name. "I like it." Baby Robert became the center of their world. Sarah had never imagined she would be a mother, and the fierce love she felt for her son was almost frightening in its intensity. Ryder was a devoted father, constantly holding Robert, singing to him, showing him around Jordan Valley as if the baby could understand. "He is going to grow up in a real town," Ryder said one afternoon, holding Robert on the porch of the store. "Not a ghost town, not a dying place." A real town with a future. He was right. By Robert's first birthday, Jordan Valley had 14 permanent residents. Ellen and Marie had stayed, and other people had started arriving. A blacksmith named Tom who had heard about the opportunity. A young couple, newlyweds who wanted to start fresh somewhere new. An older widow who opened a small seamstress shop. It was not the town it had once been, but it was better in some ways, more intentional. Everyone who lived in Jordan Valley had chosen to be there. They were all working together toward the same goal. Sarah gave birth to a daughter 2 years later. They named her Emma, and she had Sarah's dark hair and serious expressions. Robert was enchanted with his baby sister, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to feeding. The years passed in a blur of work and joy. Jordan Valley continued to grow slowly but steadily. More families arrived. Someone opened a school in the old church, and Robert and Emma learned their letters alongside a dozen other children. A doctor decided to set up a practice, reasoning that the growing traffic through the area could support it. Bill Crawford passed away peacefully in his sleep when Robert was 8 years old. They buried him in the cemetery behind the church, next to Sarah's parents and Thomas. He had become family and they mourned him deeply. He got what he wanted, Ryder said at the funeral. A simple life with purpose and good people. That is not a bad way to go out. Sarah agreed. Bill had been happy in Jordan Valley. They all had been. When Robert turned 12, he started helping seriously with the family business. He was a smart boy, good with numbers like his mother. Emma, meanwhile, showed a talent for cooking that rivaled Sarah's. Together, the family ran the store and boarding house with well-practiced efficiency. One evening, Sarah and Ryder found themselves alone on the porch for the first time in weeks. The children were asleep, the guests were settled for the night, and the town was quiet under a blanket of stars. "Remember when it was just us?" Sarah asked, leaning against her husband. "When this whole town was empty, I remember," Ryder said. "I remember thinking we were crazy to stay." "Were we? Probably, but it was the best kind of crazy." He kissed her forehead. "You gave me everything, Sarah. A home, a family, a purpose. I was just a broke cowboy with empty pockets and stubborn dreams. You made those dreams real." "We made them real," Sarah corrected. "Together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over Jordan Valley. The town was not large, probably never would be, but it was theirs. They had saved it from death and given it new life. And in the process, they had saved each other. Robert grew into a fine young man, responsible and hardworking. When he turned 18, he announced his intention to marry Catherine Mills, the daughter of one of the other founding families. It was a joyful wedding, the whole town celebrating together. Emma eventually married as well, to a young doctor who had come to assist the older physician and stayed for love. They built a house on the edge of town, and Emma continued to help with the family business while raising her own children. Sarah and Ryder grew old together in Jordan Valley. Their hair turned gray, their bodies slowed down, but the love between them never diminished. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming something solid and unshakable. "You ever regret staying?" Ryder asked her one evening. They were in their 70s now, sitting on the same porch they had sat on for decades. "Not for a single day," Sarah said honestly. "This life, this town, you and our family, this is everything I ever wanted. I just did not know it at the time." "I knew," Ryder said with a smile. "From the moment I saw you standing in that empty street, refusing to give up, I knew you were the one. I knew this town was where I belonged." "You were pretty stubborn yourself," Sarah reminded him. "A stubborn cowboy with empty pockets." "Best emptiest pockets I ever had," Ryder said. "Since they led me to you." They sat together as the sun set over the Awahi Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Jordan Valley spread out before them, small but thriving, full of life and laughter and hope. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played in the street. Travelers came and went, always greeted warmly and sent on their way with full bellies and fair dealings. It was not the town that Sarah's father had known during the gold rush. It was not built on dreams of fortune or the desperate hope of striking it rich. It was built on something more lasting: community, hard work, and the stubborn determination of two people who had refused to give up. Robert took over running the store when Sarah and Ryder finally decided they were ready to fully retire. He ran it with the same careful attention and fairness his mother had taught him. Emma's children grew up running through the same streets their mother had played in, the third generation to call Jordan Valley home. On a warm spring morning, Sarah woke to find Ryder still sleeping beside her. She watched him for a moment, this man who had given her everything, who had loved her through joy and hardship, who had been her partner in every sense of the word for over 50 years. She touched his face gently, and he stirred, opening those green eyes that still made her heart skip. "Morning," he murmured. "Morning," she replied. "What are you thinking about? How lucky I am," Sarah said simply. "How impossibly, wonderfully lucky." Ryder smiled and pulled her close. "Me too." They spent that day together, walking slowly through town, greeting neighbors and grandchildren. They sat in the store for a while, watching Robert work with the same pride they had always felt. They visited Emma and her family, holding great-grandchildren who squirmed and giggled in their arms. As evening approached, they returned to their home above the store. Sarah made a simple dinner, and they ate together in the kitchen where they had shared thousands of meals over the decades. "Sarah," Ryder said as they cleaned up together, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I love you." "I know I tell you that all the time, but I need you to understand how much. You saved me. When everyone else left, when I had nothing and no prospects, you saw something worth keeping. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Ryder, you saved me too. I was so alone, so scared. You gave me courage and love and a future. We saved each other." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held 50 years of love and partnership. They went to bed early that night, wrapped in each other's arms like they had been since their wedding night. Sarah fell asleep listening to Ryder's heartbeat, steady and strong, the most comforting sound in the world. Ryder passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 days later. Sarah woke to find him gone, his face peaceful and relaxed. The grief was crushing, but somehow beneath the pain there was gratitude. They had been given so much time together, so many years of love and happiness. Not everyone was that fortunate. The whole town mourned with her. Ryder had been beloved, a founding father of the second Jordan Valley, the man who had helped build something lasting from nothing. They buried him in the cemetery behind the church, next to the spaces where Sarah would eventually join him. Robert and Emma stood on either side of their mother, holding her up as she said goodbye to the love of her life. "He loved this town," the preacher said. "But more than that, he loved the woman who made it possible." Ryder and Sarah Reeves are proof that love and determination can work miracles. They took an empty town and filled it with life. They took empty pockets and filled them with riches that have nothing to do with gold. They built a legacy that will last for generations. Sarah lived for 3 more years after Ryder's death. She spent that time with her children and grandchildren, telling stories about the early days, about the gold rush and the Exodus, about a stubborn cowboy with empty pockets who had stayed when everyone else left. "Why did you stay, Grandma?" one of Emma's daughters asked her. "Why did not you leave with everyone else?" Sarah thought about it carefully. "Because this was home," she said finally. And sometimes home is worth fighting for, even when it seems impossible. Your grandfather understood that. We were both too stubborn to give up on something we loved. And you loved him, the girl said. More than anything, Sarah agreed. More than I can ever explain. When Sarah passed away in her sleep at the age of 76, the town grieved again. She was laid to rest next to Ryder, their headstones side by side, facing the mountains they had loved. But Jordan Valley lived on. Robert's children took over the family business eventually, and then their children after that. The town continued to grow slowly over the decades, never becoming large, but always remaining vibrant and close-knit. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun set over the Awahi Mountains in shades of gold and crimson, longtime residents would tell the story of Sarah and Ryder Reeves, the woman who refused to abandon her home and the cowboy with empty pockets who stayed for love. They had built Jordan Valley not once but twice, creating something that lasted far beyond their own lives. Their legacy was not measured in gold or wealth or fame. It was measured in the lives they had touched, the family they had raised, and the community they had saved. It was measured in morning conversations over coffee, in children playing in safe streets, in travelers finding rest and kindness in a small town in Oregon that refused to die. Years after both Sarah and Ryder had passed, a young family passing through Jordan Valley stopped at the store. The father asked the current owner, Sarah and Ryder's great-great-grandson, about the town's history. "This place has a good feeling to it," the father said, "like it has been loved." The young owner smiled. "It has been," he said. "A long time ago, when everyone else gave up on Jordan Valley, my ancestors stayed. They were told they were foolish, that there was no future here. But they loved this place and they loved each other and they believed that was enough. Turns out they were right. What happened to them?" The father's daughter asked, a bright-eyed girl of maybe 10. "They lived long, happy lives," the owner said. "They raised a family, built a business, and created a community. They proved that sometimes the best fortunes are not found in gold or silver, but in love and partnership and the courage to stay when everyone else leaves. Their names were Sarah and Ryder Reeves, and this whole town exists because they refused to give up." The little girl smiled. "That is a good story." "It is," the owner agreed. "And the best part is it is true. Every word." The family bought their supplies and continued on their journey, but they would remember Jordan Valley and the story of the woman and the cowboy who saved it. Because some stories, the true ones built on love and determination and stubborn hope, are worth remembering forever. And in Jordan Valley, Oregon, as the sun set over the mountains and smoke rose from warm chimneys and children played in streets that had once been empty, the legacy of Sarah and Ryder Reeves lived on, as enduring as the love that had built it, as permanent as the land itself, a testament to the truth that sometimes the greatest fortune is not what you find in the ground, but what you build with your own 2 hands and an open heart. The town they saved continued to thrive, generation after generation, all of them carrying forward the lesson that Sarah and Ryder had learned together in those early days when they were alone in an abandoned town, with nothing but each other, and the determination to make something beautiful from nothing. That was their real legacy. Not the buildings or the business, but the understanding that love and partnership could overcome any obstacle. That home was not a place but a feeling. And that sometimes the best thing you could do was stay when everyone else left, fight when everyone else gave up, and believe when everyone else lost faith. Sarah and Ryder Reeves had done all that and more. They had taken empty pockets and filled them with riches beyond measure. They had taken an empty town and filled it with life. They had taken 2 lonely hearts and created a love story that would echo through the generations. inspiring everyone who heard it to be a little braver, a little more stubborn, and a lot more willing to fight for what they loved. And that, in the end, was the greatest fortune of all.